even now, like you initially started as a producer or DJ? DJ. Okay, cool. I feel like a lot of people, they go through that movement where they're like, I feel like now it's kind of the tables have turned where it is the opposite, but I still feel like there's definitely a good bracket of people for, I would say like 5 to 10 years ago where you start as a DJ and then you go, okay, I'm tired of playing other people's music and I want to make my own. And then usually most DJs I've met have like a musical background as far as playing an instrument, or they were in a band and X, Y, and Z. And it's just opening that door and starting to learn this like crazy other language. Yeah. Where
totally different thing.
It's a totally different thing.
Yeah. It's funny. Like when you go, people start DJing and then production, it's like DJing and production and not.
Yeah. I'm like
we call DJs. I'm just like, it's funny that like it's just the way the scene is kind of has come about, like from years and years and years ago, where originally obviously DJs were DJs and they played music to people, and then those DJs slowly started to become the people who made the music in dance world anyway. And then we've got us who are like, realistically we're producers, we're not DJs, but we're still called DJs for whatever reason. So it's
like the old age argument, the Twitter argument, like DJ versus producer, because like there's still like a huge skill set, especially if you're DJing on vinyl, or you're DJing with like an MPC, or like you have a beat pad next to you and all that stuff. Like that's a whole like sampling and all of that. It's a whole nother like element, but I feel like it's specifically in like the touring circuit for electronic dance music, you do have to be a producer like nowadays. And you have to have that discography, and it's so crazy because I feel like people who are a bit more like uneducated about the difference, it's like, should I start DJing first or producing? I'm like producing because it just takes its time. You can learn as much as you want, but it's just like time spent in the DAW, like trying to become an expert at understanding, not only the rules, but understanding the rules so you can break them and do your own thing.
Yeah. There's so many like different, I have so many thoughts about this that so it's basically, I guess there's so many things like the technical part of production and learning the DAW and learning all that kind of stuff. And then there's the actual like, hey, I need to learn how to make music.
Yeah.
And then I really don't want to denote how important being a DJ is though, because the DJing is like our medium of, expressing what we're making. It's like our performance. And if we don't do that well, no one's going to want to come see the show. And touring is the most important part of, as you say, our income sort of thing. And like all of that stuff. So if we don't know how to put on a good enough show, then where that's why I think like my DJing background came in handy so much, because I'm so much more comfortable on stage than a producer who just started DJing because they needed to perform.
Yes.
So it's like, I think it's like, I just stress to so many new producers, like how important it is to learn DJing and like the performance art aspect of it all. Like I've just done a tutorial on how I put my sets together on my Patreon.
Okay, cool. Like edits, record box, all that stuff.
Yeah, like just like what I would do at the very start, and just like how like I'd gather all my songs that I want to play, all the other songs that I think will fit in, all that kind of stuff, how I'd put it together, and like what my thought process is there, how I like sort of first started to get an idea about how I wanted the sets to sound, and like where I got that inspiration from, and like just like the ebb and flow about how all that works, like not playing too many breakdowns, and like what the kind of like almost formula is that I can kind of use that like works really well. And like just that kind of dynamic art aspect of like DJing is like just so important. I see DJs that the performance isn't as good as what their music is, sort of thing. And I'm just like, that needs to be something to be worked on as well. So yeah, I think there's like so many facets to it that like people may not see or understand or whatever. Like DJing itself is not just fucking pushing a button. Although it's becoming that way now, because it's like so many things are automated for us in some way, like sync and all that kind of stuff.
Oh yeah.
And that's an argument in itself, and I don't give a fuck about any of that. You can do what you want, but it's like, as long as the performance is great, like sure, like you don't have, like if you're a producer and you spend fucking 70 hours in the week producing, like I do not care if you use sync on a CDJ. Like that's not like,
What's about the performance you're giving to the average person, and the average person does not give a fuck if you're using the sync button. What they give a fuck with is if you pause the track, or if like you fuck up, or if it's like something where like an average listener is gonna go, wow, okay, like that was not great. And that
comes from you knowing what you're doing up there. So like you need to know how to do it, regardless of if you're going to use whatever like that you do, because there are so many different ways you can perform now, especially if you start using drum pads and like use live elements. Like I want to play guitar up there. That means I can't DJ all the time. So I need to like figure out how to use Ableton at some point to make the set a bit like whatever. And so there's like so many different things that like, again, just make up the performance aspect of it all. So yeah, it's like so many different arguments. Like I don't use sync, but that's because I come from a DJ background. I don't need to use sync. Like it's kind of a different thing. And then like if I want to make transition edits or whatever, I can do that. Or like there's so many things that you can do as a producer, like to help the set be as good as it possibly can be. But like it's really up to each and their own as an artist, like how you want to portray that. Like that's totally fine.
Yes.
I'm not like someone who's, as I say, someone who's in the producer seat for like 70 hours a week isn't proclaiming that they are a DJ, and that's fine. Like, you know what I mean? Like if you're saying that, yeah, I'm a sick DJ or whatever, and then you use sync, then sure, you're fucking not a sick DJ. You're like whatever. But like, yeah. So it's, as you say, there's so many different like things that somehow those two worlds have melded over the production and the DJ world that they actually have nothing to do with each other realistically.
They actually have nothing to do with each other. And like putting together a DJ set, like if I have a festival or if I have like a larger set, I'm spending almost just as much time as production that week on building a set. Yeah. And because it takes, I'll sit there and I'll be like, holy fuck, I've been doing this for 10 fucking hours. And I'm like, 20 songs in my set, but it's like this momentum. It's almost like this gorilla, like moving forward. And like, you have to keep that momentum going and be like sparingly with where you're going to add your breaks, with where you're going to add live elements and all of that. If I didn't have Ableton to aid me with my sets, I feel like my sets would be such a different caliber. If I couldn't make edits and I couldn't make, cool, flips or whatever, X, Y, and Z because of things that, you just don't want to stress about